Well, the Rwandan government has long been accused of targeting opponents living in exile, allegations it's always denied. 6 days ago, former army officer Revocat Karemangingo was gunned down at his home in Mozambique's capital, Maputo. Journalist Cassian Antambuhanga disappeared in Maputo in May. CF Bamporiki, an opposition official, was shot dead in Cape Town in February. Former intelligence chief Patrick Karegeya was found dead in a Johannesburg hotel. That was in 2014. The Rwanda National Congress said he'd been strangled. And there have been several attempts to murder the former military chief Faustin Kayumba Nyamwasa. Well, for more on this, let's speak to Théogène Rudasingwa, a former chief of staff to President Paul Kagame, who's been living in exile since they fell out. He's also a co-founder of the Rwanda Truth Commission, joins us from Washington, D.C. by Skype. Tell me, what is likely to happen to Paul Rusesabagina now? How severe could the sentence be?
Well, thank you for having me. One, I must say that this is yet another sad chapter in Rwanda's tragic story. And for Rusesabagina to face a 25-year sentence simply confirms what has happened to many others before. And this is not the first one. This is not likely to be the last one. And sadly, because of his condition and his age, it's literally like Kagame has, put on a death sentence to Rusesabagina.
What can you tell us about his health? I'm not sure if you've had any contact with his daughter or any members of the family, but what can you tell us about the condition that he's in and his circumstances in detention?
Well, the circumstances in detention, starting with that, are obvious because he shouldn't be in a jail in the first instance. But I know Rusesabagina. I have known him for quite some time. Without diverging the details of his health condition, I certainly know that he's in poor health, and certainly being in jail will exacerbate his health condition.
How should the international community respond to this?
I do not know really how to, probably I will be a little more diplomatic, but I would say that the performance of the international community with regard to Rusesabagina in particular, or in general, the attitude towards the human rights abuses, gross human rights abuses by the Kagame regime, has been very, very pathetic. And it's as if they have given him a blank check. And every time Kagame tests and sees that the international community is very fickle in its response, sometimes lukewarm, like a slap on the wrist, sometimes nothing at all. I would say that to a certain extent, the international community once again has failed Rwandans. And there was time when pressure could probably have been put on Kagame to change his attitude towards Rwandans, but I don't think that this has been the case. And once again, Rusesabagina has fallen a victim of the rather lukewarm reception, and sometimes one would say that giving a blank check to Kagame to do whatever he wants with Rwandan people.
Of course, Rusesabagina won international acclaim for the film Hotel Rwanda, which obviously he inspired. How is he viewed inside the country?
It's very difficult really to get the views of ordinary Rwandans on the streets, because everything, and I'm sure the likes of All Jazeera and other international media or people who go to Rwanda see one side of Rwanda's narrative, the narrative by Kagame and his colleagues. And it's very difficult to genuinely get what the people feel or would like to say, because there's no freedom of speech in the country. There is no political space in the country. And the only voice you hear is the voice of Kagame and his colleagues. But regarding Rusesabagina contributed a lot in fact, in a way that helped Kagame in the first instance of projecting the story of Rwanda in places where it was very, very difficult to understand what took place in Rwanda. And I think the visibility that Rusesabagina got simply acts. It disturbed Kagame because the standard narrative in Rwanda is that there is a story in Rwanda, and the hero of that story is Kagame and Honoré Kagame. And I think Rusesabagina started getting into trouble when, of course, his profile was very much elevated, especially here in the United States. But the other problem that Rusesabagina landed into, which is my problem or the problem of every Rwandan who has tried to speak against the regime about the human rights abuses, is that Rusesabagina added his voice to the voice of other Rwandans, pointing to the human rights abuses in Rwanda and lack of democratic government. So a combination of his profile being elevated and speaking out on the issues of Rwanda is, of course, what he's being victimized for.
Thank you very much, Dr. Théogène Rudasingwa, for joining us.
Welcome.